When the first bulldozer rolled across my fence line, I thought it was a mistake. I'd owned that 12-acre stretch of oak-dotted pasture for nearly 20 years, prime land, right on the edge of a booming new development. The kind of place developers salivate over. Turns out, they had been salivating. The new subdivision, Maple Glen Estates, was the pride of the local homeowners association. Gated entry, walking trails, 2 playgrounds, and 98 identical beige homes, every one of them built to last. Only problem was, they'd been built to last on my land. I found out when I received a letter from the HOA demanding I cease trespassing on their property. Their property. I nearly choked on my coffee. Now, I'm not a man who shouts. I'm an old surveyor, retired, quiet by nature, but I know boundaries better than anyone. So I dusted off the old maps, called in a friend at the county records office, and started digging. That's when I found the magic mistake, the kind that changes everything. Turns out, when the development company bought their parcel, they overlooked an old easement line, one that curved just enough to carve off a long strip of land. About 12 acres. My 12 acres. Their surveyor had rounded off the corner to make the lot look cleaner on paper. Lazy, illegal, and expensive. By the time the HOA realized it, half their homes, their fancy clubhouse, and that manicured pond all sat squarely on my property. They sent lawyers. I sent coffee and copies of the original plats. Surely, their head attorney said, "We can work something out." I smiled. "Oh, we will." For months, I watched the panic spread. Homeowners were frantic, their property lines now in question. Banks refused to refinance. Realtors froze listings. HOA meetings turned into shouting matches. I stayed quiet, patient. When they finally offered me a settlement $200,000 for the land, I just shook my head. "Too low," I said. "You don't understand what you've built here." And then came the trap. I'd filed for a zoning exemption years ago when the land was still pasture. It allowed for light agricultural and personal use structures, nothing commercial, nothing residential. Meaning every single one of those 98 homes violated zoning law the moment they touched my soil. They couldn't just buy me out. They had to undo what they'd done, or pay a sum big enough to make the city rewrite its zoning map. By the time the dust settled, the HOA bought my non-existent land for $12.4 million. Enough to buy me a house on the coast, a classic truck, and more coffee than I could ever drink. When the last check cleared, I drove out to Maple Glen one last time. Kids were playing in the park, sprinklers ticking quietly in the sun. A young mom waved as I passed, smiling like she didn't know her home once sat on someone else's dream. I waved back. It wasn't bitterness, I felt it was satisfaction. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come in a courtroom. Sometimes, it comes with a clipboard, a boundary line, and a little patience.